Hello and welcome to this Sporting Planet. Can you believe it? We are already into April.
Yep, and here in the Northern Hemisphere, that means a lot more sunshine, something we've been deprived of for a long time. But it also means there's a lot of sport happening right now in my part of the world. And coming up in this episode, we're going to be chatting to a World Cup winner about what to expect from the rest of the Women's Six Nations. Are England on course to win the tournament again? And as well, the biggest prize of them all, the World Cup itself, which is coming up later on in the year, September-wise.
And jumping over the Atlantic, the Americas, it is all about the start of the new golf season. A little later on, we'll hear from Solheim Cup winner Lauren Coughlin, who is with us to preview golf's major season with the Chevron Championship, and arguably the biggest men's tournament in the world, of course, in Georgia. It's the Masters just around the corner.
Plus, the football or soccer season is reaching its conclusion in many leagues across the world. What do Liverpool need to secure a record-equaling 20th league title? Can Paris Saint-Germain become the first side in French history to go an entire league season unbeaten? And if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that I'm wearing an Arsenal shirt because I'm ready to go for Arsenal's Champions League win as well. It's all coming up on this Sporting Planet.
Todd Harris here alongside Edward Russell, and returning after an episode out, Natalie Sawyer. Natalie, big question is, how are you? What's been catching your attention in the sporting world over the last few weeks? Good to have you back with us.
Oh, it's great to be back. It really is. What's caught my eye? I suppose we haven't talked, all three of us, about Newcastle winning the League Cup final. I mean, that in itself was a massive story, obviously, winning their first domestic trophy for 70 years. And to do it against Liverpool as well, who, you know, we'll come to them a little bit later on, like Ed's already mentioned, but to do it against them, who many would have thought Liverpool would have won that League Cup final at Wembley, and to win it so convincingly as well, I think that one is just a massive tick in the box for the Geordies. And we saw 300,000 or so people turn up for the open-top bus parade up at Newcastle. Again, just fabulous scenes to see, and to finally get that sort of, you know, monkey off their back and finally win that domestic trophy for so long. I just think that's my highlight of the sporting month that we haven't chatted since.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I know you've been under the weather, Natalie. Have you been under the covers, just watching sport non-stop? What's been on the TV?
Yes, well, I have been under the weather. Last week was a bit of a write-off for me. I could not do anything. I did actually have to do a little event with Dennis Irwin and Andy Cole, which was fun. But okay. I did spend most of the time huddled up in the corner of a room, sleeping it off for as much as I could before I then had to chat to the guys. So yeah, of course, I've been keeping across everything that's been going on and really hotly anticipating what's going to be happening at the end of the football seasons, because we're getting there very so closer to those.
Like a true professional, though, Edward, she soldiered on. Hold on, let me pick up those names she just dropped. Yeah, nice work, Natalie. Nice work.
I've hung out with Andy a few times. Andy's on the, what do you call it? Basically the veteran circuit. I was trying to find a nice way of putting that without wanting to make him sound old. Legends, that's a better way of putting it. Dennis Irwin, I don't think has strapped on boots for a while, but Andy Cole, yeah, a little bit bigger, but he can still move around a pitch when needed to.
Oh, yeah. Well, I tell you what, Dennis Irwin's looking trim. He's looking in very good shape. Yeah, and was a very entertaining guest, I have to say. So, yeah, I was very lucky to be able to chat to both of them. In Dublin, at the Guinness factory as well. So, yeah.
Oh, my.
Your job is hard, isn't it?
I know. Someone's got to do it, even when you're ill.
So she was really ill.
Yes,
I promise you, I was ill. There was no alcohol related to the illness.
It's that one where you call into the office the next day.
Yeah. The Guinness flu.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, there's lots still to come up on this Sporting Planet, including an interview with England Rugby World Cup winner Rachel Burford. But first, we just want to bring you up to speed on what's been happening around the world in sport in the last week or so, starting, I guess, right here in my region, Southeast Asia. Now, Buriram United FC will take a 2-goal lead into the second leg of their ASEAN Club Championship semi-final. That's against Thai rivals BG Pathum United FC. While PSM Makassar of Indonesia, they hold a pretty slim advantage, actually, over Kongan Hanoi FC of Vietnam. That's after some pretty hotly contested first leg matches. Now, those teams are going to reconvene for the second leg in a few weeks' time. PSM Makassar travelling to Vietnam to take on Hanoi. That's on the 30th of April. BG Pathum United, they host Buriram in the return fixture of their all-Thai affair on the 7th of May. At stake, a place in the final. It is the quest to crown the leading team in Southeast Asian football. Football in this part of the world isn't just limited to teams from this part of the world. We have some big names in the footballing world traveling to Asia once their domestic season ends. Four of the world's biggest clubs, in fact, descending on Hong Kong this summer to play at the newly opened Kai Tak Stadium. It's the Hong Kong Football Festival that'll feature Liverpool, Arsenal, Spurs, and AC Milan. It's going to be the first North London derby ever to be held outside the UK. And stay tuned, news on teams traveling to Singapore coming your way very, very soon. And finally, on the subject of Singapore, I promise I'll shut up shortly. The Rugby Sevens took place here over the weekend. I went down to watch that in the National Stadium. New Zealand women retained their Sevens rugby title by defeating Australia 31-7, while in the men's, Fiji announced their return to the summit with a 21-12 win over Kenya. This is the same Fiji team who won Olympic gold both at Rio and Tokyo. They had a bit of a dip in form recently, but back there in Singapore, they did show their winning ability, their trademark attacking power, dynamic ball carrying, unpredictable passing, and some pretty interesting celebrations as well, as you'd expect from Fiji.
Oh, it's all going where you are, Ed.
It is,
sure.
isn't it?
Let's switch to Europe, shall we? One of the most prestigious races in horse racing took place over the weekend. The Grand National, of course, and legendary trainer Willie Mullins took home the 1-2-3 at Aintree near Liverpool. Mullins actually, in fact, saddled 5 of the first 7 past the post, with Nick Rockett finishing ahead of last year's winner, I Am Maximus. And the win was even sweeter for Mullins because his son Patrick was the jockey on the winner. And although it was his biggest win for Patrick Mullins, it did come with a catch, as he didn't receive any prize money nor a fee for riding, as he is an amateur. And amateurs, of course, don't get any money. But I'm sure he won't mind because he helped out his father, and he's an assistant as well for him in the stable. So I'm sure he gets money in some other means. But well done to Nick Rockett, certainly. We will talk in more detail about the football in just a moment. But in the Football League, I just wanted to bring to attention in England, Birmingham City, part owned, of course, by NFL legend Tom Brady, became the first promoted team at the first attempt. They sealed a return to the championship, having led the table for most of the season at a canter. And I'm glad that Kate Ullman isn't with us, because she enjoyed the women's Ashes and how Australia trumped England. Well, England had to make a change with their coach, and they have brought in legendary former captain Charlotte Edwards as the new coach. She replaces John Lewis after he was sacked in March following that 16-0 Ashes hammering in Australia. So a new era for England women and their cricket team.
Natalie, you know somewhere Kate is celebrating still.
Still, absolutely she will be.
Well, heading over to the Americas, Mexican Sergio Perez says he's spoken to a few teams about a remarkable return to Formula One. Now, remember, he left Red Bull at the end of last season, and he says he'll only come back if, and this is a big if, the project makes sense. And that is something that a lot of athletes say all the time. If it makes sense, I also feel that if the dollars are right. That
I was about to say, that's what he means, right?
Exactly. Well, guys, I hate to bring this up, but I also love to bring this up because I had a good run. March Madness is now over in the U.S. Of course, it is the big finish in the annual Collegiate National Basketball Championship, known simply as March Madness. It wrapped up in San Antonio over the last weekend with a title game between 2 number 1 seeds, and that hasn't happened in a long time. It was the University of Florida, the Gators, and the University of Houston, the Cougars, in an exciting game with Houston getting out to a 12-point lead in the second half. And at that point, I thought, game, set, match, this is over. Florida Gators came storming back to take a 2-point lead in the final minute, and with one final chance to win or tie the game, Houston came up short. They failed to even get a shot off. And I will say, however, that I had both the Gators and the Cougars, will prove it visually because I have my bracket posted, in the final. But unfortunately, I picked Houston to take the title. So I shared the disappointment as the Florida fans celebrated winning the title. So with that tournament complete, the attention now turns in North America to the NHL, the NBA playoffs, which begin later this month. But if I can I just gloat for a second? I cannot believe I still got all 4 teams right in the final 4, got both teams right in the final 2, and on the combined score for the tiebreaker, I was only out by 3 points. Why didn't I go to Vegas with some of Edward Russell's money? That's all I'm saying.
Hang on, so Todd, just to clarify, again, just for people who might be just tuning in for the first time today, the bracket, that is something you plot the whole way down to who's going to win it. Wow.
Yeah, they give you a bracket on multiple sites. I think I went to the ESPN site and plugged it in. I've got a group of friends from uni. We all compete against each other. You put money in or have a pot. I'm not a big gambler, so I just went for it. And this year I played what they called, it went with chalk, which means going with the favorite. I didn't play a lot of upsets. I just felt like there wasn't a lot of potential Cinderella stories, as we say, coming out of it. I took a few risky ones early on, but if you look at my bracket, I pretty much stayed to chalk, and I rode with those 4 number 1 seeds because they just were so good all year long that I didn't feel like they'd have a fallback. And I was impressed watching Houston because I'd seen them play so many times. But it was a heartbreak. Houston's defense, relentless in the face of Florida. First half, they kept Florida's number 1 scoring player to 0 points at half. So he was shut out. I'm thinking, surely Houston can't lose. And I did the full announcer jinx. I said, boy, with their defense, there's no way they can lose this. Up by 12. Gradually, Florida came back, and as we say, the shirt collar got a little tight, started choking a little bit, and when we got down to 0, it was really great. Last 2 minutes, tied 0-0, so it's kind of like starting fresh. And Florida hit a couple big key shots, but at the end, Houston had a chance to either tie with a 2-point or go for the win with a 3. And they set up a play to go for the 3, and the player never even got the shot off, and Florida was able to take it. So they get to do what every college kid wants to do here in college basketball, is cut down the nets and national championship.
That's incredible. Well, you got so close, Todd.
I did.
Close. So
close.
We're very chuffed for you. You were.
And can I just say, Todd said, I'll show you the proof if you need it. We can all show you Todd's proof because he just spammed our WhatsApp group chat with all the photos. I never knew why WhatsApp introduced the mute function for certain chats, and now I know.
Sorry, Edward.
Not at all. Hey, on the subject of gloating, Arsenal shirt in play. You mentioned the NBA playoffs. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on. That's my AOB, actually, not to give too much away. The playoffs and the play-ins, which is happening before. But just a reminder, in between episodes, you can keep up to date with all the global sports news on our social channels and our YouTube page, including full-length interviews with all of our guests. So please give us a follow, subscribe, and share with all your friends and family. Please do leave us a review as well.
Okay, let's get to chatting about the business end of the football seasons across many European leagues. And we're starting to get a clearer picture of who will finish the season with the trophy and who will miss out. We're going to start with Liverpool because they look as though they're heading towards that second Premier League title. But that will be the only trophy they will win this season. You go back a month or so ago, we were talking about a potential quadruple. But that has now shortened, as I say, to just the one title. But still, it's an impressive title to win because, as I've mentioned, to just win your second goes to show how tough it has been for Liverpool in the Premier League era. Last month, well, it was one heck of a disappointment, as they said. They crashed out the Champions League. They lost that League Cup final, as we already mentioned, to Newcastle, all within a few days of each other. And they lost their last Premier League game as well at the time of this recording. Just their second in the division, last time out to Fulham. It feels as though they're stuttering currently a little bit. Although we fully expect that they're going to go on to win their title, they're not quite looking at their convincing best, Edward. And I sort of wonder if you're thinking, hello, are they opening the door for us?
Oh, I've when you get false hope and you think, yes, maybe this is our chance, and then the hope fades away. I've stopped thinking that any doors or windows are even slightly ajar. But no, you're right. Liverpool fans probably don't know what to think at the moment because they will very, very easily wrap up this title. But on the other hand, as you said, they've said goodbye to 3 trophies as well. I do wonder whether it's fatigue, if it's a little bit of complacency. Just in that last Premier League match, as you mentioned, Virgil van Dijk, I thought, was pretty error-prone, and you don't really see that from Van Dijk that much. And I wonder if complacency has set in a little bit, and that's what happened when they lost that final against Newcastle as well. Yeah, as an Arsenal fan, I just wish that this had happened a couple of months ago.
Yes. Yeah, it's the wrong time, isn't it, for them to be going through this bad run of form because they still have a healthy lead over you, and it's unlikely, I think most of us would agree, that you're going to catch them. But it just feels a bit funny that they're just not at peak Liverpool at this present moment in time. That being said, of course, one of the biggest teams to not be at their peak is Manchester City, who could miss out on Champions League football altogether. Yeah. And in the week that we're speaking, it was announced that Kevin De Bruyne will be leaving the club after 10 years. I think, let's first of all, should we hear from Pep Guardiola and what he said on that announcement of Kevin De Bruyne leaving in the summer.
Sad day. A happy day for the fact that the pleasure personally that we live, or I live this time with him. What he give us, all of us, his humanity, and of course, don't necessarily tell his influence in our success in the last decade. That will be impossible, imagine, without him. And a sad day, because of course it's part of us, he's living. So when Vincent left, or Sergio left, or David Silva left, and these players have been contribution, and I will say more names, so these examples 3. Of course, it's a time that, it's a sad day. So, but still we have 10 games, and hopefully 11, and 6 games at home that we can enjoy with our fans, and he will get, I'm pretty sure, the love and the recognition that all of us, fans, of course, that he deserves.
So he's an icon, really, to be leaving Manchester City. He's won 16 trophies in his time at the club, 6 Premier League titles and a Champions League as well. And just from a sort of biased perspective, as someone who watches the Premier League week in, week out, to lose a player of his status? Why would I say status? To lose a player of his status would be just quite a shame, really, for the Premier League, because it is widely expected that he's going to be leaving the Premier League. But he will go down, Todd, as a great of this division.
I totally understood when you said status. That sounded perfect in my ears.
I think it's your influence, Todd.
I did. I will say this. I think this is a question that I'd throw right back at you is this the beginning of the end? Man City has been atop for so long, much to Edward's chagrin, but you talk about Kyle Walker leaving, you talk about De Bruyne leaving. Are people starting to exit and because they see the signs of, oh, I don't want to be around for a rebuild? And for Man City, I mean, obviously anything out of the top 4 is a rebuild. So I'll throw it over to you, Edward. I mean, as an Arsenal fan, you probably love to see Man City at the bottom of the table and missing out. But is this the beginning of the end for the Blue?
Well, I think as Natalie said, first of all, we just have to appreciate how good De Bruyne has been.
Yeah.
I think because if you take into account this past season where he's been really a shadow of himself, it's easy to forget just what an impact he's left on the league. 118 Premier League assists. He stands second only to Ryan Giggs in the all-time assist chart. 70 goals in 280 Premier League appearances. Really good for a midfielder. It's an impressive goals per match ratio of 0.25. And you mentioned, Natalie, how instrumental he was in all those trophy wins. His win percentage of 70.08% stands as the highest amongst Premier League midfield legends. That's surpassing the likes of Scholes, Lampard, and Gerrard. I do think, yes. I mean, obviously, every kind of generation of club reaches that point where it's time to move the players on. Kyle Walker getting on in age. He, of course, went to AC Milan. He's injured himself again now, actually, which goes to show just kind of how fragile these players are in the latter stages of their career. I mean, De Bruyne, look, was on £400,000 a week. So City couldn't afford to keep him on forever. And he's scored 4 goals and 7 assists in all comps this season. It's not really worth the money keeping him on. And that's just business, I guess.
But can I say, though, that the rumors swirling around, and first of all, he's such a stabilizing force. I mean, I just think when he's out there, they're a different team as a stabilizer, as a floor general, as we would say. But the rumors on this side of the pond, MLS could be in his future. And I know there's some deep pockets, especially down in the folks that wear the pink in Miami. They would love to bring him on because even though, to Edward's point, as they get older in their career, they do get a little more fragile, that stuff. He will put bums in seats in North America.
The problem with Inter Miami, they've already got the maximum of their 3 designated players outside of the league's wage cap. So that's Messi, Sergio Busquets, and Jordi Alba. Yeah, so they're going to have to let one go. It'd be great to see De Bruyne linking up with Messi, but I've also heard that perhaps Angel Di Maria will be coming to Miami as well. So they're going to have to work out who they're going to prioritize, I guess.
Yeah, deep pockets, that's what they've got to have regardless,
Yeah,
to pay for that for certain. But it will be a massive miss, of course he will, for Manchester City. And I think this is a massive summer ahead for them. You know, you've already mentioned some of the outgoings. There's probably going to be some more. There's a lot of players that haven't really stepped up this season. Bernardo Silva, Ilkay Gundogan, who I know was a late sort of summer transfer, but you wonder if they're the kind of players that also will be moved on. And look, if anyone can make it work and bring in enough players that they need to sort of get them back to being peak City, then it is Pep Guardiola, I'm sure. But I wonder if they'll have a statue. They're bound to have a statue of Kevin De Bruyne, aren't they? Outside the Etihad?
I'm sure they will. I mean, Man City are searching for legends, aren't they? So
well, they've already got one of Aguero.
They've got one of
Kompany,
Aguero. Yeah,
Silva.
I'm surprised there's not one of Paul Dickov, but yes.
Give it time.
But no, next season Rodri will be back. And he's been such a miss for them. He's an additional centre-back. He links the defence and the midfield and the attack. And you just look at some of the replacements that have been suggested for De Bruyne. Florian Wirtz from Leverkusen, Xavi Simon from RB Leipzig, Morgan Rogers, of course, he's doing fantastically at Villa at the moment. He actually was at City really early on in his career before they let him go. And then Morgan Gibbs-White, whoever they get, these are like early 20s, 22, 23-year-olds. So that person can really start this new generation for Man City and, you know, could feasibly be there for 7, 8, 10 years.
Yeah. We will see what happens with that. What we should quickly mention is that the relegation picture is becoming ever so clearer now. Southampton are relegated. That happened in the last match week of the Premier League following their defeat to Tottenham. They've become the earliest a side has gone down from the top flight or the Premier League after 31 games. And it looks more and more likely that Leicester and Ipswich are going to join them as well. Ipswich were on that cusp of a victory over Wolves and then threw it away at home last time out, which still would have meant they had a big gap to make up to Wolves. But losing that one like they did so late on means it's looking ever so increasingly likely that they're going to be going down, which means all three teams that came straight back up, Todd, going straight back down again.
Yeah, that's sad. And I hate to see it, especially with Leicester, with such a rich history, but their scoring absence has been just glaring. What is it, 8 straight? And they cannot dig themselves out of a hole. But to your point, it's sad to see them go up and down. I've talked with a couple people in the league, in the Premier League, and they said, you know, to really make the money, you have to stay up for more than a year. It's great to be promoted, but to get that good TV money, the extra cash, you need to stay up for 2 years. And so, in talking with my good friend, chairman of Burnley, who go Clarets, they look to be in a position that they're going to get the promotion again. He said, so it's great to get promoted. We got to stay up for more than 1 year. We can't do back and forth.
Yeah, I'm a bit bummed about Southampton because their relegations cost Arsenal about £1 million because part of the contract that was signed between themselves for Aaron Ramsdale, correct? Yeah. If he'd stayed up, then Arsenal would have got a further £1 million. But
that's pocket change in Arsenal. Pocket change.
Ramsdale, 23 top flight games, 54 goals conceded. I mean, it's not on him, but he's going to be relegated for a third time, which is not very nice. I'm a bit sad about Ipswich, to be honest, because they had their moments, didn't they? They led against, I think, Fulham, City, Villa, Man United at times, and they seem to lose too many games from winning positions.
Yeah, that's been very costly for them. And actually, even Portman Road, which I thought would be a bit of a fortress, has not been a fortress for them at all. So, yeah, it would have been nice to have seen at least one of them stay up, just to sort of buck the recent trend. But as we said, it looks like all three are going straight back down. So, come on now, we should get to the fact why you're wearing that Arsenal shirt. And the fact,
elephant in the room. Here we go.
We're recording this in between the two legs of the Champions League quarter-final. And Arsenal, wow, what a first leg, beating Real Madrid 3-0 at the Emirates. It's done and dusted, no? You're safely through to the semis, aren't you?
It would be done and dusted if it were any other side apart from Real Madrid. Because, I mean, how do you even select the variety of comebacks that they've shown over the past few years? I was looking at some of their comebacks recently. I mean, even when Ancelotti was in charge, they came back from 2-1 down at the Etihad in the final 10 minutes last season, winning the game 3-2. That one against Bayern at the Bernabeu, I think Ancelotti's team came from 1-0 down to 2-1 up and win that 4-3 in aggregate in just 2 minutes. And then what they called the Champions League de las Remontadas, which is the Champions League of comebacks, that triumph against PSG in the round of 16. And in just 15 minutes, they turned around a 2-0 deficit and the aggregate score became 3-2. And then against Man City in the semis, they won. They went from 5-3 down to 6-5 on aggregate with Karim Benzema, of course, leading the way. I was very surprised that Arsenal won that first leg. I think if you look at it man to man, Mbappe, Vinicius Jr., Camavinga, Alaba, there are only probably two players, if you're doing one of those combined Real Arsenal 11s that the media likes to do, that you would take from Arsenal, Saka and Saliba. And to a man, Real were better, but Arsenal just as a team just functioned so much better. And as you mentioned, two worldly free kicks. But Arsenal were fully deserving of that victory. And I do think that Real just capitulated. And you could see it on the faces of Bellingham and Mbappe, that they didn't know what to do.
Yeah, it was a brilliant first leg win. And you mentioned Mbappe. He leaves France, where he's been so successful with PSG, but never winning the coveted Champions League. Goes to Real Madrid, as we know, the most successful team when it comes to European Cup history. And he could be bowing out at the quarterfinal stage, and PSG is still in it. So you must be thinking, what did I do wrong there? Maybe it's just not meant for him. Who knows? But I think it was a tremendous victory. And Declan Rice, look at those two free kicks, were just sensational.
World class.
To do it once, but then to do it twice, incredible. And Mbappe, this is coming up against Jakob Kivior, and Real Madrid coming up against Mikel Merino, who's probably our fifth choice centre forward. It is staggering what Arsenal managed to do. And as I said, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but there's something about Champions League nights, and whatever happens from here on, and this is a night that'll live in the memory for many years to come.
Absolutely. And after Arsenal's win, by the way, in that first leg of the Champions League quarter-final, England now will be guaranteed 5 spots in Europe's elite competition for next season. The extra spot was earned due to the coefficient ranking of the Premier League and how those sides have fared in Europe across all 3 European competitions. It's actually possible that 7 English teams could play in the Champions League next season. If Aston Villa, for example, were to win the Champions League this time around and not qualify through the league, but also the fact you've got Manchester United or Tottenham in the Europa League. If they win that, one of those, they'll go through to the Champions League for next season. So we could have 7 Premier League teams, which does seem very greedy, but we'll take it. Just to wrap up what's happening elsewhere in other domestic leagues, here is how it's shaping up in the Bundesliga in Germany. It's like a 2-horse race, really, for the title. It's Bayern Munich that lead the way against Bayer Leverkusen as at the time of recording, which could mean that Harry Kane could finally win his first trophy. I know. He leads the way when it comes to the goal-scoring charts, and I think he's had 30 goal contributions this season, but finally could get his hands on some silverware if Bayern go on to win that trophy. In Spain, well, it's Real Madrid, Barcelona and Atletico that are all charging for that La Liga crown. 7 points separate Barcelona from top to Atletico in third. And I mentioned PSG. Well, they've already secured the title in France with 6 games to spare, and they are unbeaten so far as well. It's their 4th consecutive title and 11th in the last 13 seasons. And quite incredibly, when you consider the dominant force that they are domestically, they could go unbeaten, as I say, for the rest of this season at home or in the French league, which kind of makes me think, I would have thought they'd done that before. I don't know why, just because they're so dominant in France.
Yeah, and the fact that when they had Messi and Mbappe and Neymar, they weren't able to.
Yeah, which would be some feat then if they can do it this time around. But it does lead to the question about how competitive is the French league, and it sort of doesn't feel like it is at all when you're talking about a 4th consecutive title. I mean, it's so difficult to win 4 in the Premier League, for example, in a row, but for them to have done it and to perhaps win, as I've said, to win 11 in 13. Oh, geez, that's not bad at all.
What do you think it is, though? Do you think it's, I know all roads lead to Paris, but do you think it's just what they've set up and the culture they've set up there? Or is it just savvy work by the general manager getting the right players? Because to Edward's point, I mean, look at the talent that's been there and they were unable to get titles. And now they leave and it's like, oh, this isn't so hard after all.
I think a lot of it does come down to investment. And I do think, obviously, they've won the domestic titles before with all those key...
And they have a little bit of money.
They have a little bit of money. And actually, in France in general, their TV broadcasting deal, for example, is terrible in comparison to the Premier League. So I don't think many clubs make a lot of money in France, but because they have the Qatar Sports Investment, they just have so much money behind them. So it's very easy for them to invest wisely, as they're doing this season, because they kind of got rid of their superstar names, although they still have some very well-known individuals there. But it feels as though they've gone from being a team made up of individuals to a team made up of a team, if you like.
No, and it's funny when you mention that, because I've got in my notes here when we talk about Manchester City and what's led to their downfall or the reason why they're not, doing as well as they used to. And I just put on a basic level, dominance at the peak of world football is unrealistic. It's unsustainable. The players lose interest a little bit. You just can't stay at that level forever. But PSG have managed to do that.
Okay, well, we are on the watch, of course, for all the European leagues to see what will happen. Coming up later on, Todd's been chatting to Solheim Cup winner Lauren Coughlin about the start of golf's major season with the Chevron Championship and Masters underway. But first, we're partway through the Women's Six Nations and things are looking good for England to win the title yet again after 2 victories from 2 games. And with a home Rugby World Cup later on this year as well, 2025 could be a brilliant year for the Red Roses. We'll get the thoughts of Edward and Todd shortly, but someone who knows what it's like to win rugby's biggest prize with England is Rachel Burford. Jack Winstanley's been catching up with her, and Rachel began by explaining what the Six Nations means to all those involved.
It's such a historical tournament that's been going on for so long. It obviously has the wealth of the history from the men's side and then also with the women. And you know, it's probably one of the biggest, longest standing women's international tournament that, yeah, gets everybody very excited about. It's kind of that battle and that bragging rights for in Europe, who's the best. And yeah, over the years, it's obviously developed and got a lot tougher. And you've seen nationalities really step up in various times in cycles of their own. But yeah, it's definitely one of those that, you know, it's the tournament that you start thinking about first before anything else. And, you know, as soon as you kind of get started into your club season here in the Northern Hemisphere, you start thinking about, well, Six Nations is around the corner. So yeah, it's a massive tournament, and it's one of the best in women's rugby.
And talking about this tournament, I mentioned that we're a couple of matches in. England top of the table, 2 wins from 2. What stood out for you from an England perspective so far in the Six Nations?
I think, to be honest, I wouldn't say they've had their best performances. We're still seeing them, you know, moments within the game. They've been brilliant, you know, certain elements, but you're still not seeing that consistent kind of 80 minutes, and that's is expected. New tournament, there's a lot of new combinations. There was new caps in there, young players, so probably not that I didn't expect those elements to not be quite perfect, but you know, England's depth is just ridiculous. You know, John Mitchell has the pleasure and the ability to roll out 2 very different looking sides and still rank up a significant amount of points and pressure and still be top of the table. So that's quite scary. And it's great that we're seeing new names coming in and really stepping up. And, you know, with what's coming at the end of this year, everybody's fighting for that opportunity to play, to, you know, impress the selectors ahead of that Rugby World Cup. So I think, yeah, probably a bit of a mixed bag. I think we'll start to see maybe a bit more of a consistent squad in the last 3 rounds, building that momentum, locking in some of those combinations, because there won't be many games before they go into their first World Cup fixture. So I think we'll probably see an elevation of performance over these next 3 rounds.
I think it's natural, isn't it, that we talk about England because they've been the dominant force in Six Nations in recent years. But I mentioned France earlier on, potentially being England's closest challengers. So who do you expect to bring the challenge to England? And more importantly, can England win it?
So I've actually been fairly impressed with France. To me, they look fitter than ever. They look more organised, and they just seem mentally slightly different, which, you know, I'm not sure I'll be telling any secrets here. You just don't know what sort of French team is going to turn up most of the time. But I think I've seen a bit of a different mentality from them in the first 2 rounds. And I think having that fitness level and that everybody's kind of seems on the same page, knowing what they're doing, I think they can test England. It will be a tough ask being away from home. They don't travel particularly well. I personally can't see any other team knocking England over. Scotland, to give some context, Italy, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, all massively improving. They really, really are. But I'll come back to that point around the ability for John Mitchell to be able to rotate and still have a really, really strong... The other teams don't have that luxury. They need their best players playing against England at their best, to have their best game, to really to overturn a result. They will push them and they'll challenge them and they'll put them under pressure. But England are just too strong and too dominant. And yet the other unions they have a strong squad, but they don't have that depth that can then continue that momentum they might have picked up in the first half with their starting players. So France will be the ones that could challenge them, but I still think England will come out on top.
So looking ahead to the World Cup then that's coming to England later in the year, how big an advantage will it be for England to have a home World Cup? And I guess as well, did it play a part in New Zealand winning the tournament on home soil 4 years ago?
Yeah, no, it absolutely did play a part for New Zealand. They're a nation that are incredibly proud. They're very family orientated. They're a very humble and grateful nation. And I think, that was the first time that people had paid to watch women's rugby ever in New Zealand. So that automatically makes that squad go, we want to give back to our country and our communities and everybody who's turned out and made this the spectacle that it is. So it definitely adds so much to it. And being in that stadium when England were playing against New Zealand, you felt the crowd with New Zealand. And that is a really tough. I've been in New Zealand, I've played in New Zealand, I've played in France, where everybody is against you. It's really hostile. It's really tough. And that just gives you that additional lift. So yeah, it was a massive advantage. And I think for England, they've been the trailblazers for so long, both on the pitch, off the pitch, the way that they interact with their fans, the incredible role models. And I think they will have that as well. That is that they want to do it for everybody that's turning out. This is going to be the biggest sporting event in England this year. And they will absolutely want to do it justice. And it will give them that little extra bit of energy when they might need it, that little bit of inspiration, all those kind of things definitely play into it. So yeah, it's and as I said, they've been trailblazers. So they want to be able to thank everybody and show everybody why they're trailblazers, because they can be world champions.
So that was former England player and World Cup winner, of course, Rachel Burford, speaking to us here on This Sporting Planet. And you can hear that full chat with Rachel on our This Sporting Planet YouTube channel. So the Rugby World Cup taking place here in England in the autumn. It's going to be massive over here. There's going to be massive hype about it as well, because everyone in England will be backing England to do well as that host nation. But I do wonder, does that reach your areas, the Women's Rugby World Cup? Ed, you're sort of looking down as though maybe not.
Yeah, well, of course, in this part of the world, Australia and New Zealand are huge talents. New Zealand, of course, are defending champions. They've won the World Cup the most 6 times. Australia never actually won it, considering how successful they are on the men's side of things. The women's team lagging behind a little bit. And boy, oh boy, the Wallaroos, they're going to be in a very tough group. Not only do they have England, they've got world number 9, the USA, and Samoa as well. And the Wallaroos have never even beaten England's Red Roses. But this will be a good test for them, especially because the 2029 version, Australia's going to be hosting. So they'll be wanting to put up a good show before it comes to their part of the world. I think when it comes to Asia itself, rugby is still quite an expat sport, if I can put it that way, and I don't think it has the pedigree in this part of the world as it does in Europe, for example. I did mention I was at the Rugby Sevens last week, and there were a lot of people there, but I've got to say the majority, I think, were there to just have a good time, wear silly costumes, drink a lot of beer, and dance pretty poorly to some of the songs that were being played. But this is the Rugby Sevens, of course, which is a very, very high intensity, all action. You don't really need to understand the intricacies of rugby to enjoy it. So I think it worked well in that particular format here in Asia. But I think rugby itself still has a long way to go.
Todd, what about in the
I would
US?
say in the States it is growing, because I think women's sports on a whole in North America is having a bit of a renaissance with the WNBA, with women's college basketball. It's just doing fantastic. And I think on the heels of the Paris Olympics and the way the Americans played, meddling in there, I think it's really put a lot of those names and faces on people's minds. So let's be honest, the landscape of sports in North America is very crowded with football, with basketball, with baseball, with hockey. And so to find even a sliver there is a good opening. But I'm really excited for it. And I'm not obviously an English resident or a citizen, but I'm excited. After listening to that interview by Rachel, I mean, the confidence level is, I mean, they are feeling it, and they should. And the fact that they're having it in England, I think it'll be awesome.
Well, we know as a host nation that tends to be an inspiring factor for many to at least get to a final. We saw that with the men's Euros team, for example. I know it wasn't technically a home Euros, but the final itself was played at Wembley. And then, of course, the women's team, the Lionesses, they went on to win that final of the Euros as well. So it does help. I mean, it should be said that the RFU have invested a lot of money into the women's game with their Impact 25, which is kind of their legacy program, all spawning from the Rugby World Cup, in that how they want to increase girls and women participation in rugby. So there's a lot of money that's gone into the sport, as you can imagine. It's paying dividends because they are so successful when it comes to the Six Nations. They've won it 20 times, the most of any team. They've won it, I think, the last 6 years in a row as well, doing so with the Grand Slam. So they are so convincing when it comes to the Six Nations that you'd like to think from an England perspective that they can do the same in this tournament to then bring them that momentum, which, as we know, is so key for any sporting team or even individual. Momentum is so important, taking you into another tournament, and that's what they'll be aiming to achieve.
And what a fantastic coach they've got in John Mitchell as well, because he made the England men's defence the most feared in the world when he was their defence coach from 2018 to 2021. I was going to say I love this story. I don't love the fact that he got robbed by masked intruders whilst he was living in Johannesburg. But he was stabbed twice in 2010. He was tied up by intruders. But he said out of that came this fighting attitude, and he thought he's not ready to give in yet. And he's never again going to allow winning, losing, or drawing to determine who he is, because when you're in a life and death situation like that, you realize what's most important. And he said that it's allowed me to make critical decisions in his life about what he wanted to achieve and how he wanted to go about it a little bit more clear.
So turning our attention from rugby over to golf, the golf major season is about to get underway. The Masters already up and running. The Chevron Championship is set to take place also in April. It's a very busy time of the year for golfers, but I managed to find some time with Solheim Cup winner in between her practice rounds. Lauren Coughlin finished tied for third at last year's Chevron Championship, and she's hoping to go two better at this year's event. She began by telling me how the first few months of the season have been going for her.
Yeah, it's been kind of a weird start to the season. Just, I felt like I kind of got going and then had a few weeks off and now kind of getting back into it. So, I'm excited to kind of really get back into the meat of the season and just get to play some golf.
Let's start with the Chevron Championship, and that's first up. And obviously, you finished tied third there last year. Was there something that came together that week that made you feel, I can definitely replicate this?
Yeah, I think, it was kind of the first time I made some putts when I really needed to, especially kind of coming down the stretch when I was in a little bit of contention. Nelly was a few ahead of me, but I was kind of one of the only ones that was kind of around. And so kind of making putts when I needed to, it was kind of the first time that I've really done that. And so I think it kind of gave me a lot of confidence for the rest of the year going forward. But yeah, I mean, my parents live 15 minutes from there, so it's kind of like a home game. I get to sleep in my own bed, and it's just a really, really fun week.
Does it help that you'll be heading back to the same course this year as well? I mean, confidence-wise?
Yeah, definitely. I proved that I can play pretty well on that golf course, so it'll just be kind of see, what the course conditions are like. Is it just as firm? Is it a little softer? What's the temp, the weather? A lot of things can go on, but yeah, it's always really nice to kind of go back to a place that you've had success before.
Well, you're definitely not sneaking up on anyone. You seem to be the hot topic right now in women's golf. So after the Chevron last year, you secured your first two LPGA wins at the CPKC Women's Open and the Women's Scottish Open before going on to help the U.S. regain the Solheim Cup. What was it about 2024 that made it a fantastic year for you personally?
Yeah, I mean, getting my first win and then getting to represent my country on the Solheim Cup team, an hour from where I live in the state of Virginia, it was just a super special year. I had a lot of friends that, have never really gotten to see me play golf, were able to come to the Solheim Cup. So it was so much fun, and it'll be hard to top.
Do you feel like your life has changed in the last 12 months with all your success and obviously more media attention? I mean, look at you. You're on this sporty planet.
Yeah, I've getting asked to do a lot more interviews than I have before. But overall, I feel about the same. It's just I enjoy playing golf. I enjoy playing competitive golf, and so just trying to get back to doing that and not let some of the other stuff kind of get in the way.
And just quickly on the Solheim Cup, it was announced recently that Angela Stanford will be captain for the 2026 edition in the Netherlands. What do you make of her appointment, having worked with her as an assistant captain in 2024?
Yeah, I think everybody kind of knew that she was going to be the next captain. She's very tough and she loves the Solheim Cup, and I think she's going to be an amazing captain. They kind of asked a bunch of people from the team, who they thought, and I think everybody pretty much said Angela is who the next captain should be. And so, yeah, I'm really excited, and hopefully I'll get to be with her in the Netherlands next year.
Not to give any away secrets, but is there anything you've been working on specifically with your game over the last few months getting ready for the season?
Just tinkering on some wedges, trying to get those kind of figured out. That's not necessarily one of like the strengths of my game. Really trying to figure out bunkers. And I've put a lot of work in that, and I don't think necessarily the stats have shown that they're improving, but I know I'm hitting the shots a lot better. I just haven't quite capitalized on making the putts. But yeah, those would, I would say, be the couple of things that I've been working on this off season.
Lauren, tell me this: is there one thing you're looking forward to above all others in 2025?
Yeah, I think just getting back and seeing how I can play and seeing if I can kind of get in my bubble and see if I can, do any better than I did last year. It's gonna be hard, obviously, with results. Winning is something that isn't easy to do, and so I would love to win, but I also want to just focus on trying to get my skills better and just do what I've been doing every year, which is just trying to get better. And if that means I win, I win. But if not, I'm just trying to make sure that I can get better.
And a little chaos there as Lauren was getting ready for practice rounds in Las Vegas. We always appreciate her time. And as always, you can hear the full chat with Lauren Coughlin on This Sporting Planet's YouTube channel. And the good news is she actually went on to finish second in that tournament, the T-Mobile Match Play presented by MGM, where Madeline Sagstrom came out on top. So, guys, 2024 in women's golf really was the year of Nelly Korda. She won the Chevron Championship last year, part of 7 wins in that 12 months. And in 2023, Lilia Vu won the Chevron before going on to win 3 more tournaments, including the AIG Women's Open. So the big question to you, Edward and Natalie, is it all about that tournament? Is it all about the Chevron? Because that seems to be the springboard to set you up for the rest of the year.
I mean, it's always nice, isn't it, to win that first major of a year, and then it gives you so much more confidence going into another tournament. I mean, we're obviously listening into Lauren Coughlin. She seems very optimistic and very positive about the year ahead, and she also finished 4th at the Evian Championship, another one of the golfing majors in 2024. So she had a really terrific last year, didn't she? Really kind of, you could say, broke through when it came to those majors. We mentioned it earlier on, momentum. Momentum is so important in sport. And if you can do well in a major, one of the first majors of a year, then all eyes, I suppose the difference is, and if you do really well in one of those majors, all eyes then are on you. And it's how you then deal with that pressure, which becomes very different if you are someone that can kind of sail through tournaments and maybe not be picked up on by the media as such, wanting all that attention. So it's just having to deal with that, I think, is that one of the hardest things for any sports person, I would say.
I'm getting out of prop here because I'm coming to you, Edward. It seems like this time of year, especially North America, everyone seems to be thinking about, wow, the weather's getting a little better, the grass is getting greener. Speaking of green, the green jacket's on the line. What is it about the Masters that gets everyone so juiced up? Is it the year Rory's going to walk away with it? Is it? I mean, the Masters seems like it springboards us into spring and summer.
What are you doing with the club, though, Todd? I thought you were going to make an allusion to, I don't know, it's a wedge or something, and you're wedged between a couple of players as to who's going to win the tournament.
If this club could speak, it would tell you how many bad shots it's hit. So I'll go ahead and put it away.
We won't ask then.
If that club could speak, it would say, save me, give me to somebody else. Yeah. No, there is something prestigious about the Masters, isn't it? It's just like Wimbledon. I don't know if it's the green of the perfect green surface that you play on, or the green jacket and going into that clubhouse afterwards and just the history behind it. Rory McIlroy, though, oh boy, I hope he does it. He really, really deserves that career Grand Slam. He's been under so much pressure to complete it for so many years. Remarkably, I know he's had 2 PGA wins before April for the first time in his career, and he does say he's playing better golf now than he ever has before. I just can't believe he hasn't won a major since the PGA Championships in 2014. This is like one of the biggest names in golf, and it's been 11 years now since his last major win.
Yeah, well, he's working with a sports psychologist this time around, I think, coming into Augusta, because I think he just knows this is the one major that's missing from his full collection. So it's that sort of temperament now having to marry up with his technique. We know his technique is excellent. We know that, you know, he can deliver on a golf course. It's just maybe, as I mentioned before, dealing with the pressure, dealing with that expectation that finally I can get that green jacket, which is such an iconic green jacket. It's fabulous to see when the previous winner puts it on the new winner and all of that. I love all of that. It's just part of the tradition of the sport, and that's what is so exciting about this one. But I'm with you, Edward. I would absolutely love to see Rory McIlroy finally get it done, but he's got stiff competition, as we know.
He does. Can I just have a word for Bernard Langer as well, who's saying goodbye to the Masters after this. His 41st and final Masters. He's worn the green jacket twice. He was actually supposed to play in his final Masters last year, then snapped his Achilles playing pickleball.
See,
so he
sport
couldn't
is
play.
dangerous.
Well, this coming from me, who actually just twisted my ankle playing paddle last week. So I know where Bernard's coming from, although not quite as successful as him. So he did delay saying farewell to this year. But those victories in 85 and 1993, what fantastic triumphs they were for him. And what a legend of the sport he is, from his stance to the way that he's just... He really embodies, I guess, the tenacity of these Augusta Masters Championships.
Yeah, and speaking of pressure, I think all the pressure's got to be on the shoulders of Scotty Scheffler, trying to do something that hasn't done since, 01, 02, when Tiger Woods went back-to-back. I think it's, you know, the time of this recording, obviously, the first round's getting underway, but I really like Colin Morikawa and Xander Schauffele. Those are the two names that kind of just keep coming to my mind on this course. Of course, the storm that went through Augusta, ravaged it. They don't want to talk about, show that a lot, but it'll look spectacular. To Natalie's point, the grass will be perfectly groomed, the azaleas will be out, it'll smell wonderful, it'll be beautiful on TV. So obviously we're all looking forward to see who walks away with the green jacket.
Can I just say, there's something so uniquely American about this tournament as well, isn't there? I love the fact how when Tiger won his last one and the euphoria, and it was just madness out there, and then he went into the little cabin, the little clubhouse, and just sat down with a couple of old dudes, and it just got there's just something so uniquely weird about it, if that's the right word to use. Do you know what I mean, Todd?
Well, yeah, the fact that you go into the little cabin and you sign your card, which everyone knows what your score is. It's been on everything around the world on social media and whoever's broadcasting it. And you have to go through that tradition of signing your card and turn it in. And I think that's kind of the cool tradition part of it. But, I mean, one of the biggest events, I'll say the biggest event of golf in the world, and your trophy is a jacket. I mean, think about that. Let that sink in for a second. The green jacket, but you say the green jacket, everyone knows what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And is that right? They aren't allowed to take the jacket away from Augusta. They get a replica that they can take away instead. Is that true?
Yeah, and then you always have your locker there once as a winner, and so the jacket stays there and bring it out. I don't think that's something you're checking on the airlines anytime soon, but obviously people want to see the green jacket when you make appearances on the talk shows and things like that. So yeah, they safeguard the green jacket. Well, right now you know what's coming next. It's time for Any Other Business. All right, Edward, we'll start with you.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the NBA postseason. Now, it's no longer, well, we are going to have the playoffs, but we have these play-ins, basically. It's NBA no longer slotting the top 8 seeds in each conference to begin postseason play. It's a complicated old process. Basically, if I understand it correctly, the number 7 to 10 seeds in each conference go to the play-in tournament. It began in 2020, but then was officially adopted in 2022. And it's to add another layer of competition to determine which of the straggler seeds can earn their way properly into the postseason. So there's the number 7 and 8 seeds pitted against each other in each conference, and then the 9th and 10th seeds, and the winner of that, the number 7. It's all very confusing, but it does seem a bit like March Madness. Is that right? Are they trying to kind of leverage on that a little bit, that whole idea of the win in advance format?
The answer to all your questions, Edward, is money. And I think this is just a way to get more teams involved. I mean, I think the networks are just salivating that the Lakers and the Warriors make it into the playoffs, because those are the big teams other than Boston and New York. So, which, you know, you were at the Madison Square Garden this year. You know how rabid those fans are.
I was indeed. Oh, you know, I've got my Knicks jersey waiting for when they get through. But the NBA play-in tournament begins on Tuesday, April the 15th. So looking forward to that one in a few days' time.
Okay. I know we've already touched on it, but in football, we know the next month or so is just going to be pivotal across Europe when it comes to everything that needs to be sorted, from league title winners to promotion and relegation issues, including the richest game in football, of course, the Championship playoff final. European Cups, as well as the domestic trophies, for example, all need to be won. And the next month, we'll see the very best and perhaps even the very bad when it comes to football as seasons come to an end. And I'm most intrigued to see how the Championship promotion race will play out. There are 3 teams, Leeds, Burnley and Sheffield United, who are fighting out for 2 automatic promotion spots. And all 3 are wobbling a little bit, it seems. No side wants to run away with it. Nobody wants to clinch the title or clinch that promotion spot yet. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one pans out. And I think we have to spare a thought for the team that will miss out, as they'll have to go again in the playoffs. They all 3 have secured a playoff spot at the very least. And that could end up being a difficult passage for whoever gets into those playoff positions, not only with who they face, but how they deal with that heartbreak of missing out on promotion and that top 2 spot. But we'll see, of course, how it all pans out, and you can be able to check it out on our This Sporting Planet socials and website, which will keep you regularly updated.
3 words, up the clarets. That's all I'm going to say. Hey, for my AOB, we've already mentioned the NBA playoffs, but can I take a quick AOB moment and give a tip of the cap to Alexander Ovechkin for breaking what was thought to be an unbreakable record for goals scored in the NHL. Ovi gets it done on the road versus the New York Islanders, which they were classy, by the way. But I want to give some props to the NHL for having Wayne Gretzky there to be a part of that ceremony. Also, Ovechkin did it. Think about this, playing for the same team his entire career. Who does that now? Everyone's constantly moving around for a better deal, better contract. Not to mention that he is 39 years old and he missed 16 games this year with a fractured leg, and he still has scored 42 goals and counting this season. So I just think the way Commissioner Gary Bettman and friend of the program Steve Mayer set this up was really classy, and well done also to the University of Connecticut women's basketball team. Get this, guys, they won their 12th national title for their coach Gino Auriemma.
Incredible stuff indeed. And with that, it's pretty much time to say goodbye. Thank you so much for listening and being part of the This Sporting Planet crew.
We'll be back later in April with a special episode on everything you need to know about the NFL Draft, where we will be joined by Super Bowl winner Jason Bell. So subscribe to the show via your favorite podcast provider and on YouTube so you never miss an episode. And please do leave us a very kind review.
And make sure you check out everything on our social channels to get your sporting fix wherever and whenever you need it. Until then, from Edward, Todd and myself and the whole of the This Sporting Planet team, thanks for listening.